Women Talk Radio with Sandra Beck and Linda Crater celebrate the thoughts and opinions of magnetic, spirited, and influential women. Each week, bold, brilliant women spark vigorous conversations on the complexities of life, love, and happiness. Now here are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Linda Crater.
Good afternoon. I'm Linda Crater, and you have just joined Dynamic Women Talk Radio. Sandra Beck is usually with us, but she's off today. And we have an amazing group of women to talk to you today about a very interesting topic that is in all of our social media. We've heard it talked about a lot, but when I went to research it, it's kind of an interesting phenomenon that is relating only to our millennials, it appears. So we will be talking today with Frankie Picasso from Canada, Stephanie Dumont. Stephanie, where are you located?
I am in San Diego, California.
Oh, you.
Yeah,
San Diego.
gorgeous.
And we're
I was
waiting
there
on...
last week.
Oh, you
Sorry,
guys.
missed you.
Well, it's nice and cold and rainy here on the East Coast. I'm in
Yes.
Washington, and it's just not very nice out. That's okay. And we're waiting on Angela Breidenbach, who will join us shortly, and she's in Missouri. We are going to talk today about adulting, which is so funny. It's like the words that get invented and then become in the common vernacular, but they're not really used by most groups. And when I went and looked it up, because I thought, do I really know what it is? It turned out that I really didn't know what it was. And the millennials used it for the most in 2016. And it was being used so often that it was actually added to the Urban Dictionary. And it was talking about doing adult grown-up tasks like laundry, going to work, cooking a meal, having a dentist appointment. And I mean, it would be in quotes, I'm done adulting, let's be mermaids. And
I love that.
I do love that.
I
But
know.
I thought that it was so unusual because what they were really saying when they dug down deeply was they didn't know how to adult. They didn't know how to do some of these grown-up things. And so it was so unusual that they would talk about it. Now, the research says it's mostly used by women, more so than males, but it has a lot of social implications, and we'll go into some of those today. But adulting implies that you're being an adult, but it's not really a necessary part of your life. It's a choice you're deciding to buy into or not. I mean, do you understand that?
I think it's bizarre, actually.
I do too. And I
Because
thought it was so unusual.
Is it like to stop yourself from growing up?
Yes, they're saying it's part of this generation who has been rather cosseted, the helicopter parents, the ones who maybe didn't teach them how to budget, how to write a check,
Right.
how to go grocery shopping. And, I mean, lots of people don't know how to fold a fitted sheet.
Sure.
But that's not quite as essential as knowing how to,
Look at your bank account.
exactly get your health
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
Why do you floss? Why do you get enough sleep? So I would love to talk to you about what you think, first of all, about, you said it's bizarre. Stephanie, what do you think?
It is. I find it fascinating, the whole concept of adulting, because, in essence, it's something that, we have been doing for a large part of our lives. And like you said, we haven't really thought about it that way. We haven't used that terminology. And I really like what you said, Linda, that most of us, I think, are not taught much of adulting in school, for example,
Right.
or when we're growing up, right? I mean, some parents do teach you certain adulting skills in which we've covered, and some don't. I mean, some just aren't into it. And so then, we go off on, whatever we deem as adulting. I think when I was young, about the age of 18 was the time that parents considered that you should start learning to adult. And I just think times have changed a lot. So I'm drawn to it. I think it's really fun. And I think the way that we can approach adulting is vast and wide. And I have millennials. I'm raising 2 millennials right now. And I'm teaching them adulting the way that I wish I was taught adulting.
It's funny. I feel like I was prepared at 18. Off I went to college and lived on my own from that point on. And I remember saying to my father, are you guys going to miss me when I'm gone? And he looked at me and he said, did it ever occur to you that we're looking forward to this period of our life? Oh. Well, no, he was the blunt engineer, and my mother always smoothed the edges. But it was true. It was considered that you reach this point in life, and we have taught you about budgets. We have taught you about a savings account. We have taught you, how to eat at a restaurant, how to order, food, how to manage your life. You may not do it beautifully or smoothly, but we have taught you. And what they were saying in the articles I was reading was that many, many people are not seeing it demonstrated at home. So they don't see it. And no longer are there VOTEC or home economics classes in school.
Well, I'd like to know what the age group is for adulting. Like, when do you stop adulting and or just become an adult?
Well, that's what was interesting was the when they perceived themselves to be an adult, the majority said at 18. But when they were actually doing and living on their own, buying their own groceries, getting their own health care, taking care of an animal or something like that, they were older than 25. They were closer to 30. And this generation,
at a time when a lot of people were already had their families.
Absolutely right.
Exactly.
And there's that boomerang thing going on too, where you had children leave and then they come back due to either the economy or where they live. There are a lot of reasons for it, but it's fascinating to me because I presumed that people learned these things. I'll give you an example. How do you know what to tip?
Good.
Yeah, I taught my kids. I taught my children.
I did too. Yeah. It was a good way to teach percentages.
Yes.
And also, when I couldn't see very well anymore, I could pass it to them and say, add 15, 18%.
Yeah. Yeah. And then some of them became servers anyway, so they got the concept pretty quickly.
It did.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I did have home ec, but we didn't have that kind of home ec. We had learn to cook, learn to sew. But then I remember that my kids did have a life skills course. They called it life skills.
Okay.
They you got a checkbook and they showed you how to fill out a check and they showed you how to do a few things.
Love it.
Yeah. But I also know that a number of my friends who were married and getting divorced the first time around, they would have been born in the late 50s, let's say early 60s. They did not know how to write a check, or they didn't, their husbands looked after that stuff, right? And so a lot of them did not know how to take care of themselves. I mean, they knew how to run a house and how to do laundry, but they didn't know how to do any financials.
Which is really important because think about credit scores. Yep. You can totally screw yourself up right in the beginning. Say somebody who doesn't know how to manage money goes out and buys a car and says, well, it's only going to cost me $150 a month, no big deal. But then they miss a payment and down it goes. And 7 years later, if you're perfect from that point on, your credit score will start to be corrected. But people don't think about those kinds of things. And yet I do remember sitting at the kitchen table. We always had dinner together. That was something that was also not very common these days, but was then. And we would talk about things like budgets and when you run out of money. My family had this bizarre, well, to me it was bizarre. I've heard other people say it's quite common, that there were envelopes that were for food, 1, 2, 3, 4, gas money, 1, 2, 3, 4, for the weeks. And so my sister and I still loathe the color of gray envelopes that we saw this in. But when the money was gone, it was gone. And it was an excellent way to teach us that. So there was a miscellaneous one, and my mother would be very, very conservative, and somehow she could save a couple of dollars here and there. And she always did a marvelous job, but we learned money management very early on.
You're very fortunate that you learned that.
I am.
For me, when I was growing up, my father, I remember my parents saying stuff like, and God bless them, I love them, but money doesn't go on trees. And they didn't share a lot of their financial information with us.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad, the same way that he did it for himself, he just kind of assumed, I think, that I would figure it out myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a little, I had a little more to learn, I think, than everybody else when I was growing up. And I like to think of adulting as like a maiden voyage, kind of like doing something for the first time. And I think that's an interesting way for millennials to look at it too, because they are, going out into the world. And like we said earlier, they're doing all sorts of things that we did not do, 18 and up.
Mm-hmm.
But they're important things. They're often sitting on a whole lot of college debt. They're trying to manage that. And they honestly don't know how to take a look at a budget and say, okay, what do I save? What do I spend? Try to explain a 401k to somebody who's younger and tell them it's not taxed income when you put it in.
Right.
But to them, no, it's taken away. Whereas it's interesting because as children, we were taught that first we saved, and that went into the bank account that we rode our bicycles to and went to the bike window or the walk-up window in those days. And you learn to put that away. And you learn very quickly that if you didn't see it, you didn't miss it.
Interesting.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And my dad taught me that too. He did tell me that every married woman needs to have her own bank account. So make sure that you have a separate account that your husband maybe doesn't even know about. And if you ever get in trouble or you need to go or whatever, you can run.
That's
really smart.
Dad. Yeah. That's a very smart dad. I didn't have that.
Yeah. And my mom.
I didn't listen to all his great advice, and I wish I had of, but.
I love it. We have to go on a short break. You are listening to Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and we're visiting right now with Frankie Picasso and Stephanie Dumont, and we are talking about adulting, about doing those adult tasks, and how do we teach them and demonstrate them to our children and the next generation. We'll be back after a short break. Stay with us. We're Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and we'll return after these short messages.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Eating fish can be delicious and healthy if you choose wisely. Fresh fish is a lean protein that is typically low calorie and very satisfying. But when fish is breaded, fried, or drenched with butter, it becomes an unhealthy, calorie-dense food, especially when you order fish in a sit-down or fast food restaurant. The greasy breading and creamy sauces can destroy the nutritional value. So make good choices when eating fish. Grilled sole, tilapia, or trout is mouth-watering and good for you. Salmon is abundant in omega-3 fatty acids, is light and scrumptious when poached, grilled, or pan-seared. So forego the restaurant fish entrees and opt to cook fresh fish at home. You don't need to be a seasoned cook to prepare a simple fish dinner. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond.
Welcome back to Dynamic Women Talk Radio. We've also been joined by Angie Breidenbach out of Missouri, and we're continuing our discussion on adulting. And on the break, I was talking about the one area that I felt I didn't emphasize enough with my children was insurance. And when they went off and got their own apartments early on, one of them got renter's insurance and was not broken into, and the one who didn't get renter's insurance was. And it was a brutal loss because they just hadn't anticipated it. They had no coverage for it. And insurance always seems like something you could skip because it won't happen to you. Do you guys have that experience?
I think insurance always feels like something that you skip because they never pay out.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Exactly. It seems like a ripoff most
Yeah,
of
it does. And especially when it's forced insurance. Like here in Canada now we have forced insurance. You have to have car insurance. There's no way around it. So you can't even really choose because everybody
too.
yeah, they've got you, you know. But insurance, I didn't know that there was a renter's insurance, but when you buy, if you're a first-time home buyer, you have to have insurance for sure
Yes.
on your house and on the mortgage.
Yes.
And yeah,
There's not only the renter's insurance, but there's ID theft insurance. And
Oh, wow.
you can get that through your home insurance.
oh, good.
And the biggest problem with this internet, is that it's so easy to steal someone's identity.
Sure.
We just found
so
out
hard
about
to get
that. And it's, yeah. But even telling our kids, here in the U.S., I'm in Montana, and I have a son over in North Dakota, and he was able to be on our insurance until he turned 26.
Oh, wow.
But we had a daughter that went back and forth between the laws changing. We had to take her off at 23, which is what the law used to be.
Used to be. Right.
And when she was like 25 and a half, it was, you can be on till 26. So she got like 6 more months. But
Nice.
then they have to figure out their own insurance. And a lot of times when they're very young like that, they don't have any health issues. They don't have any problems that they know of. They can't foresee them. And, of course, they're indestructible.
Of course
Right.
they
And
are.
so helping them understand this is crucial. Well, the one in North Dakota ended up having desperately needing an emergency surgery. Didn't know why he was sick, and turned out it was the gallbladder. Oh, no, appendix.
Oh, wow.
And we
That
were
is
really,
immediate.
really lucky.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was. And we were super lucky because at the time he was still on our insurance. We still ended up paying out close to $20,000
Wow.
because
What?
Holy
For an
moly.
appendix?
yes.
With
That
insurance?
emergent and yes.
Like, what's the point?
Well,
Seriously.
And that's what the kids
we
are
should-
saying. What's the
we-
point,
yeah. We should do a show on insurance.
Just
but-
on insurance. Yeah. I mean,
So
we really
funny.
think twice about getting, like you buy a TV or you buy something, do you want the extra insurance? No. You know why? Because they're designed to fail, and you may as well
Okay.
just save your money and buy a new one because you know you're going to have to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's times like that. And
Yeah.
you can buy here, the insurance for cars is so different. We're not forced yet,
Mm.
but anybody who is not insured, they can crash into you, and then your insurance covers uninsured motorists. But
Oh,
how do you
geez.
explain to your child not to be that uninsured person
Right.
that
Well, not only
causes the
that,
damage
but,
and the harm?
I mean, we had a friend who was hit by an uninsured motorist and died.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God.
Terrible.
Well, you can just imagine. I mean, it's just very difficult, but I think that is one of the reasons it is starting to become forced, because a lot of people do make it an optional instead of a requirement. You do have to get it, though, if you're leasing a car or if you have a payment plan on the car, just like a mortgage.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's interesting. But it's more than just the financial things, although to me, those
Yeah.
are the big ones that children really need to learn. And there are adults who still believe that if you've got checks in the checkbook, they have money in their bank.
Oh my gosh. This is Frankie. I remember my son being about 13 or 14, and he's like, Mom, he goes, you wouldn't believe it, but my friends, they don't even know how to do laundry. And my
Wow.
kids are doing their own laundry. They've been doing
Right.
their own laundry for
That's
a long time.
awesome.
Mine too.
And I'm like, you raise boys, you raise girls, like everybody's got to know how to do it. And it's not a big deal for them. And I was a busy working mom, and, if they could come home and do a load of their own, then great.
Mhm.
And he was actually, so surprised that their mothers did all this stuff for them, and not in a jealous way, like in a way like, oh my God, like can't they
Amazement.
do something for themselves? Right? Yeah.
See, but I think you, Frankie, have probably the same attitude I did, which is I wanted to raise my children to be good mates.
Yes.
I wanted them
to raise
to
them
know
to be adults.
exactly.
Yes.
Because maybe I wouldn't always be there. So I wanted to make sure that they had the skills. And, everybody likes or dislikes certain chores more than another.
Yep.
But at least if you know how to do a skill, you're better off.
Yeah.
You may make your mistake. You may put that red shirt in with the whites only once.
Yeah, this whole idea of adulting and deciding if you're going to be an adult today or not, like that's kind of funny. Today I'm adulting, but tonight I'll go get drunk and crazy and.
But see, now you bring up other points, because the social aspects, or the healthy habits, let's call them healthy habits. Yeah. You need to be responsible. You presumably have a job. And you used to be able to go out, but if you go out tonight, okay, you may show up at work, but haven't any of you or all of you been next to someone at your workplace who is reeking of alcohol?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I used to work airline, Sandy, and, it was really not fun to hear somebody or see somebody behaving in a way, whether it was a worker or a passenger or something like that, that wasn't in the adult arena when you're in such a public and an enclosed place.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's also the millennials these days, they have this assumption that adulting is boring. Like you said, I'm done with adulting, or I can't handle adulting. And our generation, I think, is kind of trying to hold on to the virtues that we loved, being childlike, but also adulting. And this is kind of what I'm trying to teach my kids right now. I'm trying to teach them that they can make things fun, that if they do things that they're passionate about and, look for and explore their life's work instead of just a job or, a career they may or may not like. So I'm really into having my kids explore these different social aspects and the healthy habits that you were talking about. I think it's really important.
But think about this too, and I was considering this because I was raised in a family that we repaired things, we maintained them, we really had a lot of skills. And I remember my daughter saying, "Do you have an extra bureau?" I'm like, "Yes." "Come to the storage unit." "Yes." And we picked it out, and she wanted to change it. So we sanded it down. We sawed it up. We did some significant changes to it. And she looked at me and she said, "Where did you learn to do this?" And I said, "My father taught me." I said, "You come from a long line of handy women." And so she learned. And, there's great pleasure and pride in being able to take something that's, now they use the word vintage, we would have said old, but taking something vintage and making it into something else. And in this case, it was 120-year-old European bureau that one of the grandparents had brought over and is still in use because we could do that. Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I love that. I love that.
But I know people who can't maintain anything.
Oh, yeah. My husband was talking with our girls one day, and they were 11 going on 12, and they wanted to have a playhouse. And they were just leaving elementary and going into junior high or middle school, wherever you live, what it's called. And so over the summer, he has been in construction. He owns a heating company here in Missoula, and he has been in construction for a long time, and he decided that, well, if they wanted a playhouse, they were going to build it themselves. And so he taught them. He did. They built this playhouse, no kidding, to spec. You could live in this playhouse. It did not have running water or electricity, but it had, all of the doors were framed and everything was perfect corners, and they learned how to drill and saw and use hammers and paint and measure and level things and put in windows. And of course, by the end of the summer, they played in it for a couple of months, and then they were junior high and they were too old for it.
Sure,
It's become our spec shed.
That's funny. We were just talking about that this weekend because, my stepdaughter wanted to make a playhouse for the boys. Now the boys are just turning 3, and I said, they'd be just as happy with a big box. With a big box from a refrigerator as they would, having some big playhouse. And it's more for her, I think, than for them. But it's, every age, every stage has a thing, and she likes to build. She likes to make things, and I think that's really credible and wonderful, and it's fun, and it feels very independent and adult to do things like that. But when mommy and daddy race to save you all the time, it's hard. You can't be an adult. And
right.
I gave my kids 2 years to move out. I'd already moved out, but they lived in a house that I had, and I said, in 2 years I'm selling, so you have 2 years to get your act together. And I think they were 20 and 22 respectively. Like the twins were 20, I think. Anyway, so last week my son said, "You kicked us out," and I go, "Yeah, but you know what?
You
I kicked
us
you out
out?
over 2 years." And not one of you failed. Like, you all thrived. I gave one of them first and last month's rent, and that was the only time I ever had to bail him out or give him money. I said, after that, you got a job, you paid for your stuff, you continue to pay for your stuff. So actually, you know what? This mama did you a favor, because you could have just, hung on and been at, my breast forever, right?
Yeah.
But you weren't. And I left early. I left at 17. I knew that they'd be able to do it. It was just, they were a little bit afraid. And of course we all are, when you don't know what's going to happen to you. But I think they were independent enough that they could cook and they could do their own laundry and they could do things that, it's just basically go to work, bank your money.
You learn the value of things. When you do that, you learn that going to work may be something you have to do, but it allows you to pay the rent, to pay the car payment, to buy your groceries. If they don't do it themselves, or if you haven't had them running to the grocery store for you previously, or doing errands, that usually happens when they first get their license.
Sure.
They're happy to do that.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, but it's important to learn that. And it's very thought-provoking when they look at their peers and they see who does it and who doesn't do it. And I think there's a lot of pride if you do it earlier on. If you wait too long, sometimes they're feeling very inadequate because they don't know how to do it. And that makes sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
I think
with our daughter, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We have to go on a break, Angie. So I don't want you to start a wonderful thought and we can't conclude it. So we are going on a break, and we are talking today with Frankie Picasso, Stephanie Dumont, and Angela Breidenbach. And we will be back after these short messages. You're listening to Dynamic Women Talk Radio. We'll be right back. We're Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and we'll return after these short messages.
It's words you never heard.
The Do Not Disturb sign has been around as long as there have been hotels where discretion was a bitter part of value. One lecturer at Cornell University School of Hotel Administration traces the Do Not Disturb sign roots to the aristocracy of the early 20th century at grand establishments such as the Ritz in Europe. It sure is annoying when you just want to be a slug of bed and someone knocks at the door and says, "Housekeeping." What's the word for the semi-conscious state between sleep and wakefulness? Hypnopompic. There are days when I wish I could wear a Do Not Disturb sign around my neck. What do you call someone who wants to lay in bed all day? A scabrelacher.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Word.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Now that summer is almost here, it's a perfect time to change up your workout routine. For many of us, summer means new schedules for our children and for us. No matter where you live, this new season will bring new opportunities for you if you look for them. If you do most of your exercising outside, you may have to adjust your exercise time due to the heat. Maybe you will need to get up earlier to get your workout in when it's not so hot. Or maybe where you live, summer means that it's finally warm enough to exercise outside. You may have had to exercise indoors for months because of the cold, but now you're able to take your workout outdoors. Whatever your situation is, find new activities to add to your routine. Swim laps or take a water aerobics class. Join a biking group or running club and get outdoors. Take advantage of this new season and rev up your workout. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond.
Welcome back to Dynamic Women Talk Radio. On the break, we were talking about something that I don't know has a lot of discussion these days, but we were talking about, did you know how to drive a manual shift car? And we all do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Every one of us. And we taught our children to do it as well. And in my case, my dad said, girls, because my sister and I, we both learned at the same time, you never know in an emergency what the vehicle will be. And if you have to drive a manual shift, you need to know how to do it. Right. So we all learned it. I have a funny story, though. My daughter and her husband went to Kenya between years 3 and 4 of him being in medical school. So they're driving on the opposite side of the road, right? And the roads are not good and filled with potholes, and you have to go around donkeys and all kinds of things. And he wrote the blog post that day and said, you never know how small you feel. And he's 6'8". And she's 5 feet tall. When your wife has to teach you how to drive manual shift, and you have to learn it on the wrong side of the road, driving with the wrong hand and the wrong. I mean, it was hilarious. So it's a good thing to teach me.
Well, I think girls learn how to shift ambidextrously.
I think you're right. Yes, we do.
I agree.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're all thinking back. Yeah.
Wow, wrong hand. I could see there's so many issues there with that, because the skills of just doing it with your correct hand, and whichever it is, if you're in
right.
a British style driving or US style driving, and you have to learn shift on the opposite side of your, oh my goodness.
It was just a very funny blog post, but it made me really proud that I had taught, both my children how to do this. So, Stephanie, on the break, you said you have a great quote that we'd have fun discussing.
Absolutely. Okay, so it's the scariest thing about becoming an adult is realizing absolutely no adult knows what's going on ever. So, and this is true because, when you're young, you think that adults know it all, and then you're the adult. And you realize that as the world changes, and as, society changes, and as we change and go through these different phases in our lives and raising our children, that, we're doing a lot of things right now for the first time, in addition to our millennials. Do you ladies agree?
I do remember when I had my first child that I thought, honestly, where is the operations manual?
Yeah,
because, my mother had died, and I didn't know I didn't have that role model, and we were very mobile, always living somewhere else away from family. Mm-hmm. But I think we went through phases. I think we went through phases where we thought adults did know everything. And then we went through phases where we thought they knew absolutely nothing. And we just weren't really very respectful of the fact that they had lived all these years and we knew more. And then you come back to the stage again where you know that through wisdom, life and experience and being young and foolish, that you actually do know a lot more than you think.
Yeah. And, I always say to my kids, even my 15-year-old daughter right now, she has so much more wisdom, I think, than I did when I was her age. And, I don't know if it's the internet and their access to, information worldwide, or, the constant interaction they're having. But I just feel like she's so much more mature at that age than I was. And, she's responsible in ways that I wasn't. And it teaches me a lot. It teaches me a lot. So, and we're, one of the skills about adulting, my son, for example, last year we went through the applying for college process for the first time.
Oh, that's super fun.
No, not.
Right.
But that was just fascinating. And I explained to my son that, my parents did not help me apply to schools. I don't even remember talking about it with them. And I did the whole thing by myself. And, we, went through this process with my son and teaching him what to do. And thank goodness they had a class at his high school, actually, that taught them. It was called College Applications. And, it taught them about the process. But, just following through, the characteristic of following through, the characteristic of consistency, and of, the fact that we have to follow up with people. I find that with adulting, following up is really important. And I'm a go-getter. And, if I've taught my kids anything, I teach my kids that you have to go after it. In this day and age, you really have to go for it. It's not necessarily going to be given to you right away. You have to establish yourself. And I mean, are you having the same experiences with your kids?
Frankie?
Yeah, my kids are the youngest are 30 now. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's a little different. But, I wanted to tell you about my friend's son who is almost 30, lives at home. Mommy has made every excuse why she has to buy him a car and why she needs to send him on this trip. And for years she's going, oh, I just can't stand how he's like this. And I go, kick him out. Why is he living here rent free? Why are you doing this? You are not helping your son. You are hurting your son. And how he can't keep a relationship and he can't keep a girlfriend. I go, well, think about it. Would you want to go out with a 30-year-old man who lives at home and never had a place of his own, doesn't pay for rent, doesn't have a car that he pays for? Like, come on. Like, what woman wants that? That is like the most unattractive thing I've ever heard of.
What did she say?
Well, she just thinks that that's her baby and she wants to help, but you're not helping him.
No, you're not. Because then what happens is the relationship doesn't work out and they move back to the house.
They never work out.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
No, I'm serious.
That's terrifying.
It's true. No, it's true. And,
it is true.
He's still living there. And I said, at least make him pay rent. Make him pay for something.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
It's interesting because we had to pay for things when we were very young.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted something, you earned it.
Yeah.
You went out and painted a fence. You went out and picked strawberries. You did chores. You worked for it early on. But I don't see that happening much anymore. The kids are, quote, so busy getting their resumes together to get into college or wherever they want to go or do, that the excuse is they don't have time to do that. So no one shovels snow anymore. No one rakes leaves anymore.
Yeah.
Not where I live. I'm out doing my own snow last week, and there was another woman my age out doing the same thing, and no other kids.
Wow. That's
so I'm a kid then, right? By that very definition. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like that. And, my daughter did some work recently. I had a friend who did a phenomenal documentary called The Butterfly Project. And my daughter actually auditioned to do, she's the narrator in this film. And so she's already gathering her resume, and she came to me and said, Mom, I'm really interested in pursuing voiceover work. And she's an artist as well. And so we're actually going up to Los Angeles in 2 weeks, and she's going to record a demo with a friend of mine who is in the voiceover industry. So, we can help them. We can hook them up.
Yeah.
Right? And help them. And when they express interest in something, I always try to say, okay, well, you can talk to this friend if you want to, learn about law, or you can talk to this friend. They went to a university that you want to apply to. And so, I think that's nice, is that we can, introduce them to someone that can help them, right, with their experience, but not necessarily, doing it for them throughout their life. I mean, going into 30s.
Yeah. No.
No. I'm just thinking the same thing. Frankie, do you think that you believe that no adult knows what's going on ever?
No, I think that we know what's going on. I think that we've, I guess it depends how long you've lived and how long you've been an adult. But I think if I
feel like I've been an adult
very
forever.
Long, yeah, me too. And, I think I do kind of know what's going on certain things in certain given things, but not to ever know. I mean, they're like with, raising your kids, it doesn't come with a handbook. It really doesn't. So that's just something you got to figure out on your own, what's going to work for you and your family and your relationships. But as far as not knowing anything, I think that we know a lot.
I think we do too. One of the things I think that does teach children how to be responsible for someone other than themselves is a pet.
Yeah.
I really think it does. If they're responsible for making sure that that animal is well, is fed, is cleaned, is walked, whatever it may be, depending on the pet, it really does help. So if they go through their lives without ever being responsible for another living thing in their home, it doesn't give them any practice.
Right.
And it's also compassion training too.
Yes.
I mean, this is something that, has been coming up a lot, on my shows is the idea of maybe having to go into schools and teach compassion, because we're just, there's so much fatigue around it. And, they do say that, children who mistreat animals, are the signs of, your next mass murder. So I think compassion and training and looking at, looking after an animal, and even like we had a big funeral for little dude. He was a gerbil or whatever they are. I can't remember what he was, a hamster, but that was very memorable.
You're a better mother than I said no rodents.
but I
did
remember
the spring break one, but never owned one.
I remember my daughter went and like after the winter she dug him up just to see if he was still
Oh my gosh.
But,
it teaches you life and death, right? It teaches you goodbye.
It's a circle of life. Did you sing? Yeah, you could just sing the song.
I like it.
Oh, my gosh. I love it. But I do think that was a good way to kind of show that, you wanted the pet. And so with the pet comes responsibility. And it worked beautifully. Yeah. Because they fell in love with. Who doesn't love animals? It's a very rare person that doesn't. But one of the things that I think all of us
does fall off rather quickly when you have to keep walking
on a rainy day.
But I felt like that with my baby. Like I have to bathe him again tomorrow. Ooh.
You want to eat again?
I know.
It's the truth. It's the truth. So as we go further, I want to just insert this right before the break. I think one of the hardest things as an adult to do that is so minor, but kind of made me laugh when I was thinking about it, was trying to make that first Thanksgiving dinner to get all the dishes to come out all at the right same time. And I wished that I had watched my mother more closely for all those years when I was setting the table or, getting the beverages or whatever it was. So we are going to go on a short break. We are talking with today Frankie Bocasso and Stephanie Dumont. Frankie's from Canada. Stephanie's from San Diego. I'm Linda Crater in Washington, and we'll be back after these short messages.
We're Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and we'll return after these short messages.
If you're like me, sometimes you have trouble choosing between being a couch potato or going out. Hey, it's a big decision for us Scobberlatchers. A Scobberlatcher or a ragabash is another word for a lazy person. Well, a couple from California seems to have solved the problem by inventing a motorized sofa. You may think they're just spinning their wheels, but people have spotted the couple cruising down the street on their drivable Davenport in West Los Angeles and Santa Monica. No word yet on the couple's identity, but a man claiming to be a relative said it's all well within the norm for his fun-loving cousin. I don't know if this Chesterfield on wheels is street legal, but either way, I think the police would have to put up quite a chase before they could coach him.
It's Martin.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
A study done by the University of North Carolina found that Americans are not only eating more, we are eating more often. From 1977 to 2006, the number of daily meals and snacks increased from 5 to 7. The study also cited that we are consuming 570 more calories per day than we were in the late 1970s. The meal portions have stabilized in recent years, but the total number of calories consumed is rising. Eating 5 to 7 small, healthy meals throughout the day, instead of eating just 3 large meals, keeps your metabolism revved up and keeps your hunger away. But the operative word here is small. Choose fresh fruit, vegetables, and low-calorie nutritious food for your meals, along with daily exercise. I'm Annette Hammond. To hear other fitness and weight loss tips, visit our website at AnnetteHammond.com.
Welcome back to Dynamic Women. We've got Angela joined us again, which is great. Always technical difficulties make life really fun. We were talking on the break about the fact that there's obligations and responsibilities to being older, making ethical decisions. And those things are not always taught or demonstrated to us. We learn them from different people, and you're lucky if you do learn them from anyone. Otherwise, you have the school of hard knocks, which is sometimes a really tough way to learn, but you won't forget it. That's the good news about that kind of training. But Frankie, I'll go to you first. What are some of the things that you would talk about, the obligations, the responsibilities, the privacy, the ethical decisions? Pick one of those and talk about how we either inculcate it for our children or don't.
Yeah, I think I really like the idea of ethical decisions and teaching people what ethics is, and it's almost a code of honor in a way, and it's a difficult concept, but it's not. And I think you need to show them by example, and when you do make a decision or have a decision to make about something that you war with, I think it's good to bring your children in on that conversation and tell them why you're having such a difficult time with it. I have a friend who just divorced her husband, or she's getting a divorce. Like she decided, like he's disabled. He had a massive stroke at 40. They're now close to late 50s. But he decided to stop bathing and stop, showering and caring and whatever. And like she just got grossed out, and she's like, you know what, like, man, like she's put up on a lot, and he's very, very controlling about the money, and like his mind still works, but he can't talk very well. And it's just a whole bunch of stuff. For 18 years she's put up with all this, and she's had enough, and she really just would like to have a man who could take charge, who could drive, who could have great sex or whatever it is, right? She just wants the rest of her life to be a little bit happier. And her family is livid. And she goes, but
her family or his family?
Her family. His family doesn't want to look after him. Never did. Never did. Dear. Like he had broken up with her, and she had actually gone back to look after him once the stroke happened, because nobody in his family wanted to look after him. So, she kind of put her life on hold for, these last 18 years. And now she found a beautiful, retirement home for him. And it's going to, force him to be a little more social. He has to come down for meals and all this. He doesn't like it because the people are old. Well, you know what? Like, you're getting older every day anyway. So what? But they're not that old. I mean, it's a retirement home. It's not an old age home. It's just, they could be
like an over 55 community or something.
Yeah. But there's like, nursing and stuff if they need it. He has his own room, he has his own TV, his own everything, but they do make you come for meals and do that kind of stuff. And so her daughter is calling her nasty names and is being horrible to her. And her brother's actually flying out from another province to come and be with her, because the kids are just so not accepting of this. And I get it. Like, maybe like her kids, oh, mom, come babysit for me. Mom, do this for me. Mom, do that for me. But it's not. What about her as a person, as a human being who would like to be happy? And yes, she's done the very best she can for her partner. She's put him in a very nice place. It's a little more expensive, but it's nice, right? Like she didn't just drop him off and go to hell. She's making sure that she's the one who's going to take him to doctor's appointments. She's the one who's picking up food. She's the one who's doing his medication. So she didn't just, she wants to have her life, but she's still going to look after this man, that she was married to. And I think ethically, that's the best that you can hope for. because his family wants nothing. They're like, don't think you're going to come live with us because you're not,
That's a tough one.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is. But I think that, we all deserve to be happy. And I always say as a coach, we come into this world alone, we leave it alone, and everything that happens in between, well, that's our lesson, for us. We don't, she doesn't have to look after him for the rest of it. He's not pleasant. He's not nice to her. And yet, she still looks after him. So I think that she's a beautiful human being, and I certainly believe that she deserves to have, a happy life and a boyfriend or whatever she wants. But the rest of the world doesn't. And her in-laws won't even talk to her like she's some kind of whore or something. I mean, it's horrible.
Oh, gosh.
And she didn't want to have an affair. She did not want to have an affair. So she said, this relationship is over. Now I'm going to go find somebody.
Wow. Angie?
I would say that's a huge ethics issue because, did she, since we don't know all the details that are in there, and I would say it's ethics, it's morals, it's, there's a huge amount of unpacking that would need to be done. I'm certainly not in the position to judge her because I don't know her situation. I think she would need to sit down with her children and walk them through how she made that decision, like you said, because that is a decision that's not easy to make. And it's one that I don't know that I could make, without knowing the specifics of her details. And I do not want you to tell them.
No. I would say that he's not the
That's
father
not
of
fair
her
to
children.
her. But
He's not the father of her children. And her
Right.
kids are all married with kids of their own. They're all grown
I
ups.
guess,
They're all grown ups.
If this is such a situation with these other people, the only thing she can do is, go and explain her side of the story and hope they understand. And if they don't understand, it's not her problem at that point. Because it's her own life and her own decision.
To other people?
What's that?
Adults have to explain their decisions to other people.
I think in a place where you want to communicate and you want to have a relationship with other people, you want life not to be so crazy full of all the condemnation that you're saying that she's getting. And these are people that are somehow connected or related to her. I think in a relationship with those people that it's a good thing to go and sit down and have a conversation. Do you have to? Of course not. But for the best situation for everyone, for a sense of comprehension, understanding, and connectiveness, then that's a good thing. And the fact is that if this is that man's family, they need to be as close to on the same page as they can.
No, this is her family. These are her kids who are doing.
Then yes, she does need to go and sit down and talk to them.
And she has. They just don't want to. They don't want to accept it.
Well, but this is a perfect example of why being an adult is really difficult.
Yes.
I mean, it's like when people say, I hate my job, I don't like work. And my mother always used to say, well, that's why they call it work.
Exactly.
And that was sort of along the same lines here. I mean, these are the kinds of adult decisions that have to be made. And if you don't have practice making them on a much smaller level, can you imagine getting to that point?
You see, I can imagine, Linda, thinking a little bit harder about this decision if my kids were young, if my kids were 12 or 13.
Oh, yeah,
or
I'm not saying I would struggle with it personally,
but
because I hear what
if
you're
my
saying.
kids are in their 30s, I'm sorry, this is my life now. You're living your life. I'm an afterthought.
And they're already out of the house. Why are they not offering to help carry some of the load with? He's not their father.
He's not their dad. No, but
if there's this issue of connectivity where they're feeling the stress of it, then there's obviously relationship there. But this is where she, as a mom and as a human being in relationship with other human beings, the best way through this is to sit down and discuss it and communicate. Because this is a situation if she can't do anything different, it's going to cut off the rest of her family from herself. That's not good either.
So let's go into one of the things that's also tough about being an adult, and that is privacy. When do you get that privacy? How do you keep it? What is the difference between secrets and privacy? And that's ethical as well.
For me, it's about setting standards and boundaries. And, standards are the requirements that we hold for ourselves. And boundaries obviously are for other people. And so I think we need to, explain to other people what our standards are. It's not commonplace, but I think it needs to take place in order for us to kind of meet at the same level, or for other people to understand better where we're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And, with boundaries also, it's important for us with privacy to say, I tell my kids, I need some time to myself right now. So I'm going to go upstairs in my room, right? And they say that to me. You know what, Mom?
Right.
Thank you so much for coming in my room. I really appreciate it. And I kind of need some time to myself. So, you were talking about modeling behavior earlier, and I think this is really, really important, is the practice of this behavior, and not just with kids or millennials, but with adults as well.
Well, a lot of adults don't have privacy boundaries of their own, or they have quirks that make them act socially challenging. Shall I use that word? And those kinds of people you can identify pretty fast. Yeah. But I think, Chuck, we have just a few minutes left, but Angie, let's talk about the risks you take as an adult, and how do you teach proper risk taking to youth?
I think the risk, you have to literally sit there and do a pros and a cons situation. And I think youth, they don't want to do that. They don't want to look into the future and see what could happen. Mm-hmm. So you do what we've done seriously with all of our kids, our 6 kids, and they're all grown, 26 to 34. We have sat them down and gone through pros and cons. And one of our sons decided to buy a car when he was just out of high school. And here he is now. He'll be 32. Sorry, he'll be 32. And they just got rid of that car last year because when he went to do it and he didn't listen, he ended up in an upside down loan where the loan was higher than the value of the car. So they drove that car into the ground.
Lesson learned.
That's hilarious. Another thing for me in regards to that is asking our kids, what would you like to do about this? Or how do you want to handle this? Because sometimes as adults, we do think we know everything. And a lot of times our kids will come up with their own solutions on their own. So even if they're older kids, but asking, what is your solution to this? How do you want to get involved? I think that's
asking
really
questions is the crucial thing. That if you ask the questions and you let them talk it through, you can then ask more questions. Oh, what about this? What about that?
Exactly.
You're teaching your children coaching. Well done, ladies. We have to end our program. I'm so sorry, but we have been visiting today with Frankie Picasso from Canada, Stephanie Dumont from San Diego, California, Angela Breidenbach from Missouri. I'm in D.C. And thank you so much for joining us today to talk about adulting and the many complexities of this very unusual word. Have a great week. Thank you for tuning in today to Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and join us each week. You can find more shows on dynamicwomentalkradio.com.